There you saw some of the sights and sounds of Bronx Week. Definitely one of the most exciting weeks here in the borough of the Bronx. Well, continuing in political news, yesterday's primary win was a split win in the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders winning in Oregon while Hillary Clinton claims Kentucky. Donald Trump, once again, uncontested wins Oregon, and each party getting closer to the winning nominees and or declaring their winning nominees. And the question is, are the parties gaining strength or lacking unity, particularly on the Democratic side with the latest that's happening? Here to discuss more is political commentators J.C. Polanco and Mariah Starr. And yes, we are coming fresh out of a Super Tuesday. I'm going to let the Dems take the lead on this one right here.
Terrific.
Democratic debacle here. You got Bernie Sanders winning a state, but then yet and still we see some chaos, some fighting, similar to what we saw on the Republican side.
Yeah, very similar. You have Sanders with a clear win in Oregon, about 5%, and Clinton is barely winning Kentucky by like 2,000 votes or less than 1%, but they're splitting the delegates in Kentucky. So Nevada had a very interesting contest with Sanders, where they were charging that the DNC was not really recognizing the votes for Sanders. So you have a really interesting battle going on in the DNC. Now, what I'm finding very surprising is that I have students who are very much for Sanders. They're so much for Sanders that they said they will vote for Trump if Clinton is the nominee, because they believe in what's called the Phoenix logic. If you allow Trump to destroy the country, it will have a rebirth. That's organic. And all Clinton will do is prolong the slow death, whereas Trump will just speed it up. So this is what we're dealing with, a party, a Democratic Party that's collapsing from within.
You know what's funny about your students is that, like most Bernie supporters, they're so unsophisticated. The idea that you want to burn up the country as fast as possible so that there could be some rebirth, how arrogant and ridiculous is that? I mean, honestly, I hear that from a lot of Bernie supporters. The reality is this: I never thought that Bernie was going to win so many primaries as he did. The guy's not a Democrat. He's not. He's never lifted a finger for a Democrat, and he's giving Hillary Clinton a run for her money. Although he's mathematically eliminated from winning, and there's no way possible that he wins the nomination. What he's doing is that he's saving my party millions of dollars by attacking Hillary as often as he has. Because while Trump sits on the sidelines and watches Bernie Sanders burn Hillary up, we're saving millions. And guess what? Our numbers are getting closer. And although I'm not a Trump supporter until I get that major contrition that I keep talking about here on BronxNet, it's abundantly clear that Donald Trump has closed in on Hillary Clinton in the polls, and it's only May. Can you imagine after Donald Trump and the Republicans spend millions of dollars painting Hillary Clinton as crooked Hillary and using a lot of Bernie Sanders' talking points? I would bet you money today that this won't be what we thought a couple of months ago, where it was going to be a landslide victory for Hillary.
So the Sanders states that are being won right now, would you give those over to Trump and say, listen, if in a general election, these are states that honestly Donald Trump could win, given the fact that Hillary did not win those and Sanders came away with victory?
I think Trump was going to win those states, even though Hillary had won both states. Do you disagree, Professor?
Yeah, like with West Virginia, Sanders won that clearly last week, but Trump is clearly going to win that state. West Virginia has not gone for Democrats since 1988. So the states that will definitely go for Sanders or for Clinton are California, Oregon, Washington, New York State, Massachusetts. These are the solid Democratic states. The states that might flip are Ohio, Iowa, Pennsylvania, maybe even Wisconsin and Michigan.
I don't think Pennsylvania will flip. I think Hillary has Pennsylvania. I no longer think it's a purple state. I think it's a blue state, and I think it's moving further to the left as the cities keep growing.
Okay.
So it's going to be interesting. I think that if you look at the polls in the battleground states that Mariah was talking about, the numbers are even closer, showing Trump actually taking Hillary out in a couple of these, which is, I see what you mentioned, Philadelphia is within the margin of error. But I'm so surprised. First of all, I'm surprised that Donald Trump has actually won this nomination.
Me too.
And second, I'm surprised that the poll numbers are as close as they are nationally and in the battleground states. So we're going to see something very interesting. And I tell you this, Bernie Sanders stays till Puerto Rico and California. I'm going to tell you, this is going to get worse for Hillary Clinton, and it's going to get much better for Donald Trump.
The question is, there's no clear path to victory for Bernie Sanders. We know it's mathematically not possible. So the logical question is, why does the Bernie Sanders stay in now, given the fact that we know definitely after yesterday, no clear path.
Well, there are three possibilities here. One is that the superdelegates will look at the poll numbers of Clinton versus Trump and Sanders versus Trump. Sanders has greater margins than Clinton, and so if they care about the most viable general election candidate, then they'll go with Sanders. The other factor is that even if they don't go with Sanders, Sanders can still get his platform, he can still get ideas in the Democratic platform. And that's an important part. He's already pulling Clinton to the left. So just the ability to put a stamp on the Democratic Party, that's huge right there.
But what's interesting is this, that, we're playing poker here on my side. We keep talking about wanting to go after Hillary, but the reality is this, Bernie Sanders will kill us in November. I mean, every poll is showing that 54-38 is the latest poll I've seen between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. It's a lot easier for us to beat Hillary than it would be for us to take on Bernie Sanders, which again is very interesting considering that 30% of Bernie Sanders supporters have come out and said they will not vote for Hillary, and only 25% of my side has said they will absolutely not vote for Donald Trump. And I think it's going to get even more interesting the further we get along. Remember, Darren, this is a $1 billion race on our end and a $1 billion race on yours, and who knows where this is going to end. It could be $2.5 billion at the end of November.
Donald Trump spent some time last week meeting with Paul Ryan, and while there is no clear shaking of hands and saying that we're all one, yet and still there's talk out of Paul Ryan's camp and the GOP a little bit closer to unity than ever was. What are we going to see out of the GOP? Will we see an endorsement by Paul Ryan of Donald Trump?
Well, I was hoping not. I was hoping that he would hold on until we get this contrition. And I know Mariah disagrees with me, but I'm Catholic, I believe in redemption. Listen, I think that if he were to come out, Darren, and say, I am so sorry, African Americans, for not denouncing the KKK. My goodness, Mexicans, what was I thinking? Women, I'm so sorry I use those words. If he were to come up to a point where he can actually say those things and mean it, and then apologize as to how he won the nomination, then I was hoping that Paul Ryan would come out and endorse. But until then, I was hoping that he would hold on and keep his powder dry. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Paul Ryan is going to ultimately endorse Donald Trump maybe a month from now. But I think Paul Ryan understands that the polls are showing that the Republicans believe that Donald Trump is the leader of the party. He doesn't want to lose support with his base, and he's going to have to just give in somehow, unfortunately. But I could definitely see Ted Cruz sitting this one out.
Let me just be clear about apologies. They work when there is a clear temporary sin, like I had an affair, please forgive me. I cheated my taxes, please forgive me. But when you have a consistent denigrating of very specific groups, so women, Muslims, Hispanics, that's not possible to overcome, especially when you look at the unfavorable ratings that African American women have of Donald Trump. 70% of women dislike Donald Trump. 85% of African Americans dislike Donald Trump. No apology can erase that gap. And so when I think of Donald Trump trying to apologize and express contrition, he might try to do it, but the numbers prohibit it. He might get 10 or 20% in there, but he's not going to be able to win these groups. He's
somewhere along the line, somebody has to disagree and say, listen, because at one time we were having a conversation and saying this man would not even get this far, and yet and still he's winning state after state after state after state. Muslim, women.
Darren, he's doubled his Hispanic
Jews.
support out of nowhere. I don't know how this happened. So when Mariah says this is impossible, I'm like, Hillary did take Bill Clinton back. I mean, anything is possible when you think about it. So I think that if we were to see an honest, my goodness, what was I thinking? I think that you're going to have people like Paul Ryan and some of the Never Trump folk come out and say, okay, well, let's give this guy a chance. Not to mention that we really want to see him do his homework with policy so that he has a clue about what he's talking about in detail. Until then, you're going to see guys like Tom Ridge and Jeb Bush. You're going to see Ted Cruz. A lot of us Republicans that are offended at what Donald Trump has said in the last year will be sitting this election out. Although, can I tell you, Darren, I didn't know we were going to be in such a super minority. I thought there were going to be a lot more of us. But it shows that about 85% of Republicans are comfortable with Donald Trump and are going to be supporting him in November.
And let me get this in here, too. You talked about Bernie Sanders not being a Democrat, but the truth is Donald Trump wasn't always a Republican. We've seen strong money from Donald Trump into the Democratic Party and casting his net over there. What does it say when you have somebody who isn't really a Republican come into the Republican Party and then be able to all but win the nomination.
Well, there's one analysis that I keep reading about from Nate Silver and Thomas Edsall. You see the same people who voted for George Wallace in '68, the sort of white working class group. George Wallace carried 5 states in '68. That same group is now supporting Trump. So that's why a Democrat who was populist then can now become a Republican with the same coalition.
You see that? Mariah does that at the end of every single segment. He tries to paint the GOP as a racist party by bringing in George Wallace and insinuating these things. The reality is, I'm no supporter of the guy, but to say that he's just a George Wallace is unfair, considering that he has so much support coming out of different groups. Now, I disagree with a whole host of things, but George Wallace was a segregationist who believed in segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. I don't think that's Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has not said that. Donald Trump has said some extreme things, but calling on segregation is not one. And to say that that's what the Republican Party is today is unfair. There are a lot of us that disagree with Donald Trump. A lot of us are going to focus on down-ballot elections and trying to keep the Senate. And a lot of us Republicans would not be supportive of George Wallace.
All right, well, that's the time we have for this segment. Of course, we'll bring it back next week. We'll analyze and break it down a little bit further. Guys, thanks.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, we got to move on with the show. In other news, the Bronx celebrated the finale of Bronx Week with a colorful parade in the borough. Our BronxNet correspondent, Hanoi Evangelista, has more.